Broadcasting from the heart of the nation, the next generation in conservative talk radio. This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Why, yes, it is. What is up, my friends? Welcome into it. Hey, it is a Friday. Greatest day of the entire week. You made it. Pat yourself on the back, man. What a time it has been. Greatest day of the week, as usual, as we set that tone for the weekend, which is what we're here to do. So welcome aboard. Strap in, buckle up, and let's have some fun broadcasting right here in the heart of the nation in Wichita, Kansas, on our flagship radio station. We are all over the country, multiple stations, radio, TV, live streaming, podcasting. However you watch or listen, welcome aboard.
Do it live!
That's right, the Voice of Reason doing our thing like we do every single day. You can find information on the show at HoosierReason.com if you want to find all of our great links, social media, podcast, and so much more. But boy, no guests today. You and I chit in the chat, doing our thing, staring at each other across the room and looking at each other deep into the eyes and saying, hey, I think we can solve the issues of the day today. Right? That's what we do on this show because we continue to
winning
each and every day. All right, no guests, so we have a lot to cover, a lot of breaking news going on, a lot of really big news going on today, and that's really kind of exciting. So let's just jump into it here, shall we?
What's trending today?
First and foremost, I know there's some Epstein stories. We will cover that in just a little bit, but I like the policy issues first and foremost. We had a big win yesterday, late last night, overnight. So thank you to all the House members that worked their way back up into Congress and made that vote happen after the 51-48 vote in the U.S. Senate that codified $9.5 billion in Doge cuts. Now, again, is it a lot? I mean, it's kind of the pennies in the couch cushions compared to the entire federal budget, but at the same time, it's a start. Name another time when the federal government has actually done their due diligence to rein in spending, to cut spending, to downsize agencies. And this was kind of the week where it happened across the board. Yeah. If you're not aware, we saw near 1,400 jobs in the Department of Education go to the wayside. Boom, done. And the Supreme Court said that the Trump administration's allowed to do that, which is kind of weird, as we've said throughout this week, that, you know, it's weird that we even had to ask permission because they fall into the purview of the umbrella for the executive branch. So while Congress appropriates the money to these agencies, the executive branch has the authority to decide how to actually enforce the agencies and how they actually do their job. There's no arbitrary line that says that Congress says there must be 2,848.5 employees with the Department of Education. It doesn't work that way. They just say, here's what needs to be done, and here goes to the agency. And then the agency finds ways to either be efficient or non-efficient in their actual spending. So it's really good news that the Supreme Court on Monday this week said that we were allowed to do that. At the same time, we've gotten word that the Trump administration has also cut roughly 1,400 employees from the State Department, which is really big news. So already that's like 2,500, 3,000 employees that from the federal government that are now gone. We can tell you the proper farewell here for the Voice of Reason. Bye, 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 bye. And I'm kind of excited about that. Now we have the Senate that passed it on Wednesday, the 51-48 vote in the U.S. Senate to codify $9.5 billion in Doge cuts, the codifying of those, reining those back into the general funds. And last night, we saw the big victory and the big vote from the House of Representatives, a 216 to 213 vote as well, to codify, and now it's sitting on the president's desk. And that is, my friends, wonderful news. Now, this covers a range of things, just a little breadcrumb, a little tease, a little taunting of what we're going to expect with more rounds of rescission cuts later on that included $1.1 billion in public broadcasting across the nation.
Say what?
That's where everybody's really angry, especially with the left side of the aisle, and we'll cover that in just a moment. The rest of it is predominantly USAID funding that was going to, I don't know, like transgender whatever, Sesame Street, transgender Elmo that was in Zimbabwe or something. And the fact that we even have to worry about that type of funding is a little strange, but here we are, and now we're finally starting to rein it in, which I'm really excited about. In fact, this is exactly what we needed, especially after the passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill, where we had a lot of the conservative fiscal hawks. And I told you, maybe they're going to get back on board, and maybe far away in a distant galaxy, far, far away, Elon Musk with SpaceX, who has changed his phone number because he does not want to talk to Donald Trump or Mike Johnson any longer. Maybe, just maybe, the Birds have flown into him, and the owls have sent him the message in that galaxy far, far away that he has seen that we are now codifying some of the cuts that he has worked on with the Department of Government Efficiency, and he's smiling somewhere in the galaxy, looking down upon us as Elon Musk does, and says, hey, at least they're moving slowly in that right direction. And the fiscal hawks in Congress, being Chip Roy, Thomas Massey, Senator Rand Paul, Ron Johnson, those guys that really did not like the one big beautiful bill because it does increase the debt ceiling, which I understand why we're frustrated about. It did potentially increase debt, which I don't think it will, but the Congressional Budget Office said it might, that these guys really happy that we're doing this.
What we saw the Senate do yesterday was very encouraging. While they removed a handful of things regarding PEPFAR that we think was more important to be in the bill, at the end of the day, it's still over $9 billion of significant reductions using the power of the president through rescissions combined with the power of Congress under the Budget Control Act to rescind spending in order to make sure that we're actually doing what we should do from a budget perspective and trying to reduce wasteful spending. USAID spending that has been now very publicly shamed in terms of the kinds of spending. $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. Just dozens of examples of just fraught with waste. And we're removing all of that. And this is stuff we've been working on for years. My friend Eli Crane offered an amendment 2 years ago in appropriations to remove all of that. Interestingly, we only had about 104 Republicans vote for it and had 12 or 14 vote against it. Now things have changed. President Trump's leadership, our efforts in the Freedom Caucus and conservatives, now people, I think, understand this waste needs to go away. The efforts that Elon and Doge did to highlight it.
Yeah, all right, so that was Congressman Chip Roy in the great state of Texas. That was on Fox News late last night, early this morning, as we talk about these codifying of the Trump tax cuts. He's absolutely right. And guess what? If you want to talk about the significance of this on so many different levels, the layers of the onion that are so significant here, the first time probably in like human history that a public government entity is not trying to centralize power, grow influence over the private sector, take over more industry, which is what we've seen for a really, really long time, right? We're starting to see it go in the opposite direction. It's small. It's significant, but it's small. It's $9.5 billion. For you and I, that's a lot of money. For the federal government, they're like, okay, whatever. I didn't even know we had that pocket change in the couch cushion kind of thing. But it's a step in the right direction. And for people like this, he's right. We tried to do these cuts a long time ago. We've tried to cut Planned Parenthood out of the federal government's funding. We've tried to cut public broadcasting out of the federal government. We've tried to rein in wasteful spending, and it's never worked. But the stars have aligned. And with the help of Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency, even though he's not involved any longer, is an intricate part of this. The unity that Donald Trump has brought within the federal government with the MAGA movement, reforming the Republican Party from within. The leadership, and I will give him credit, with Speaker Mike Johnson, who has had a really tough time reining in all the different caucuses internally from the Republican Party to get them on board. We've been able to actually cut government spending, and this is absolutely amazing. And guess what? This is only the beginning. And I bet you that the promises that were made behind the doors, if you remember, during the One Big Beautiful Bill process, when they were, House Republicans especially, were really delaying the floor vote, and after it had come back from the Senate, we were waiting. They were doing the preliminary different procedural votes to try and start the debate, and it was being delayed. Republicans weren't getting in there to actually vote, so they're keeping the vote open, and all the behind-the-scenes negotiations were going on. I guarantee you that this was part of that negotiation to say, hey, if you vote on this bill, which we really need, I promise you we will get rescission bills, we will start cutting the government, and we will start reforming spending from within. And guess what? Not 2 weeks after, here we are. We've done it. And another one's around the corner, apparently, as well. But this is bigly. This is really huge for what we're moving forward to. And
I think we're going to make it bigly.
This has been a big week for the Trump administration and for Republicans all across the board, between the announcement of the Epstein files, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit, with the One Big Beautiful Bill, with the rescission bill, with cutting employees from the federal government. I don't know another more productive week other than probably the first week of the Trump administration when he signed like 350 executive orders, which is really awesome. Now, for just a moment, let's get into the public broadcasting, shall we? Because obviously being in radio, kind of pertinent, kind of important to talk about where media and information is coming from. Chip Roy also had a comment on that.
The funding for NPR and PBS I mean, listen, Harris, I was just in Texas with the floods that were ravaging the communities that I represent, and they were more interested in trying to get people to call their House members and senators to save NPR and PBS than they were on reporting on what was going on with the floods in Central Texas. So we know they're biased. They don't need to be funded by taxpayer dollars. Now we can save money and actually do what the American people sent us here to do.
That's pretty exciting. At the same time, during the Senate floor debate, Senator Ted Cruz had also made a similar comment talking about the bias of NPR and PBS and public broadcasting, which is there. It's very evident. I mean, they try to say we're middle of the road and we don't give an opinion, but it's not true. It's really not true. It is very far left, and the fact that it's even out there at all that people listen to, look, I mean, we know the crowd that listens to PBS and NPR, which is really unfortunate. If it were just straight line down the middle, there would probably maybe be a different conversation here, but number one, they're not, and they've never really have been, and I don't know that we could necessarily have anybody really do that at all anymore.
Public broadcasting has long been overtaken by partisan activists, plain and simple. This isn't just an abstract critique. NPR and PBS have revealed their left-wing bias time and time again. Exhibit A, after the New York Post broke the Hunter Biden laptop story, NPR ran political cover for the Democrats, refusing to cover the story. Quote, "We don't want to waste listeners' and readers' time on stories that are just pure distractions." Mind you, the story was true. That's why they didn't want to cover it. As for PBS, its coverage of last year's DNC was only 12% negative. The RNC, a staggering 72% negative. If you want to watch left-wing propaganda, turn on MSNBC. But the taxpayers should not be forced to subsidize it.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting. So Senator Ted Cruz there. Here's the thing, and I kind of smile because the progressives are really angry about the cutting of public broadcasting, so they're going to do their own part. Here's the funny part. This is the way it should have been done in the first place. I saw a social media post earlier today from a college professor here in the Wichita, Kansas area. In fact, I'm going to be debating with him on a local TV program later on this afternoon that's going to run this weekend. I'm really looking forward to it. I've met him a couple of times. Great guy. He's just on the other side of the aisle for the most part. Made a post really angry about the cutting of the public broadcasting funding from the federal level in the sum of near $1.1 billion, saying that because of that he encourages others, and he's going to do it himself, of doubling his contributions to the local NPR and PBS stations in the local communities. And I commented, I said, that's good. Like, I applaud you for that. Thank you for that. We appreciate that very much. That's the way it's supposed to be in the first place. Look, private radio, private TV stations, how do we operate? We operate based on businesses supporting our airwaves, sponsoring, running radio ads. That's how I get my paycheck for both the radio show here and for my regular job that I do as an operations manager and program director that's, essentially 7 days a week that keeps me busy. That's how I put food on my table, is based on businesses that sponsor the radio station as a whole and sponsor my radio show. That's how I make my money. PBS and NPR need to do the exact same thing. And while they always say that, hey, that the federal funding isn't very much, it's only like 20% of their overall federal spending, we still need a lot of donations and personal contributions. That's the way it should be. That's the way you need to do it. If you want it to continue to function, the public, the consumer, should be contributing. So while we do it based on businesses that are supporting us, they can do it based on individuals that's sending in their checks and liking the product and the programming that they have, and see how long it lasts and see how long you can keep your doors open. That's the way the system's supposed to work.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier. When reason meets radio. This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Yeah, welcome back into the program. Great to have you here as usual on a Friday, celebrating, getting you set for the weekend. We're going to carpe diem all over this place, which is the way that we rock and roll here on the show. So great to have you. Yeah, so I am looking forward to, by the way, ironically, as we talk about this issue regarding the funding or the defunding of PBS and NPR, public broadcasting across the nation, I will be on our local PBS channel later on this evening, as there's a show here in the Wichita, Kansas area called Kansas Week, talking about Wichita and Kansas issues. I'll be on that, and with a local college professor from one of the universities here in the area, we'll be on and debating some of these issues. So I'm looking forward to that, and ironically doing it on a platform that we just cut federal funding for. So I can only imagine the topic's going to come up. And this college professor on his social media, again, made the comment that, hey, I'm going to double my contributions to NPR and to PBS and to public broadcasting, and you should do so as well. And I wholeheartedly encourage you to do that. I applaud you for something like that. In the private business as I am with radio, we get ours based on businesses supporting us and trying to get their message out. We help them market their stuff. They get customers to come in and buy their product, and they continue to advertise with us, in which case I get a paycheck. That's the way the system works in a private sector. With NPR, PBS, public broadcasting, people, the consumer likes the broadcast and likes the programming, they will donate and continue it, keeping it going. Or businesses will do the same thing in some type of charity or donation or advertising in that aspect. That's the way it's supposed to be. So while they're angry that the government's cutting out, they're only feeding into now the capitalist system, which is the way it was intended to be in the first place. Prime example. And it's ironic it's all happening at this time. For those that don't know, I am a city councilman for our small town that I live in, which I'm really honored to be part of that and actually see the inside of how these conversations work. Just last night, it was a late night. We had our very first work session as our city council and our mayor and our treasurer and our secretary and everybody else on working on our annual budget for our city budget. And I've never been through a budgetary process as an elected official of a city council in any aspect. I've always been on the radio talking to elected officials, city council members and county commissioners and state reps and everybody else talking about budgets. But to be part of it myself, even though it's a really small town, was extremely fascinating. And I absolutely loved it. And it breaks my heart because some things have been done for a long time where it really hadn't kept up with the city. And the whole conversation last night was essentially different rates that we have to adjust when it comes to utility rates and natural gas rates and electric and everything else, and where we're at in order for us to function as a city moving forward. Fascinating conversation. At the end of the meeting last night, we had a proposal come up from some members of the community on top of everything that we had just talked about potentially having to raise a lot of different rates on different utilities and other issues, of having a $2 monthly, fee for every member of the community for what they wanted to call community activities, to cover different community activities within the town that would give free admission to students going into the pool during the summertime, and then for the city when they host like our 4th of July celebrations and they focus on other community events, that it would be a $2 community fee. So that way it would offset some of the budget from the city, and it would give students in the community, and maybe low-income students who don't have the opportunity to go to the pool, the opportunity to go because the community would be funding it. And while we're talking about, and the same people that were angry about raising rates on everything, we're all about this idea. And I stopped for just a moment, and I said, wait a second, I'm sorry, I mean, we didn't vote on anything last night, but we discussed it, and I said, this is a really dumb idea. I'm sorry. I'm not for communism. I'm not. And while it could help out young communities and it could help out young students that don't have the opportunity to go to the pool and whatever, I asked the simple question, wouldn't this be better if we went to businesses, if we went to community leaders and had them do a donation? And we started a fund to help the lower income individuals. And we sponsored the pool that would be free for every student during the summertime to go into, instead of paying the $2 or $3, whatever it is, to get in each day. Why wouldn't we have the private sector contribute to sponsor it, as opposed to a communistic pool of just making everybody spend it? And then we have all these community festivities. I'm not for it. It's the same concept as this public broadcasting.
Is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier. Truth, reason, and common sense. This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Well, the beauty of this, Will, is this is exactly the scenario we had in the first term. We had the Panicans in the first term reacting to the tax cuts, the tariffs, everything we were doing, saying it was going to cause inflation and recession, yada. And all we had was strong growth with zero inflation. We're repeating the same scenario, and we've had 3 reports now this week: consumer prices, producer prices, and today retail sales. And every time we're doing better than Wall Street said we were going to do in terms of expectations. Today, retail sales were higher than expected, indicating a strong economy. Producer price index yesterday was lower than expectations. And for 5 months, we've consistently been beating expectations on inflation. We've been below consistently. So we love where we're at.
So that's Peter Navarro. That was on Fox News just a day or so ago as well, talking about the economy. Big wins, especially after the one big beautiful bill, the trade and tariff negotiations. We see inflation starting to come down in flax. Inflation was essentially stagnant for the past month or so. So we're moving in that right direction. We're slowing down that inflation. We're seeing the GDP growth. Here's the thing, and we'll get off the economy in just a minute and get to the Epstein stuff, because I know you're looking forward to that one as well. But here's the thing. There is a difference between the economy doing well and consumer sentiment, which the media and the pundits and the quote-unquote experts, I say that in air quotes for the radio listeners, the experts are the ones that create consumer sentiment. What is consumer sentiment? Well, the optimism of the economy. Should I spend money or should I hold on to my money? Should I invest and, take the risk of expanding my business, or should I hold on to it and be a little bit more reserved? That's the consumer sentiment, and consumer sentiment has been relatively low. And I get it, where there's uncertainty in the market right now. There's the trade negotiations and tariffs that are kind of throwing things off a little bit. But overall, the economy is doing very well. Egg prices are down like over 60% since February when Trump took office. We're back down to like $2 a carton. Oil and gas, if you go to the gas pump, it's back down to levels that we haven't seen in 4 to 5 years. Overall, inflation is down. In fact, we've seen for a couple of months now the first time inflation actually drop in negative levels, not just grow at a slower rate, but actually negative for the first time in 4 or 5 years again since the Biden administration. Or I guess since Trump the first time, and then Joe Biden came in and we saw a 30% increase in inflation over the past 4 years in a cumulative manner. So the economy is good. Why is the consumer sentiment not where it needs to be? Why are people not freely giving out their cash and spending more money, which they kind of are? In fact, many states across the Mid-America region especially, they really are. I just saw the numbers here in Kansas and showed that sales tax receipts for the month of June up 7% above expectations, meaning people spent more money than what they were expecting to do so by 7%, and we saw that revenue come into the state government. That's kind of exciting. Overall federal level numbers we saw in June compared to June last year, well over like $500 and some odd billion in tax receipts coming in at the federal level. So we are spending money, but the consumer sentiment's down. Why? Because all the experts, all the Democrats, all the pundits, they all say that we're on the brink of a recession, that Donald Trump's trade deals and tariff negotiations are sending us into uncertainty, that we don't know what's going on, he's going to crash the market, so on and so forth. They create all this fear, and then you and I watch the news and listen to this, and the experts tell us about how bad it's all going to be, and then we listen to all this, and then we just buy, and we're like, well, maybe I shouldn't spend this much money, I'm going to keep it in. And then businesses, well, I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know if I have customers coming in. I'm going to not spend as much money. And we have this consumer sentiment down because of the fear mongering, because people don't like Trump, because of the anti-Trumpism, the TDS that's still rampant in society, when overall the economy itself actually doing very well. So congrats to that, Peter Navarro, rocking it on that. And I can't wait to see what the economy is going to do going into third and fourth quarter, especially holidays right around the corner. I know I know you don't want to hear that. Yeah, don't. I'm sorry. That's not what you want to hear with the holidays just a month away, but we're just about there again, and I can't wait to see what the economy looks like at that point. All right.
What's trending today?
Obviously, this has been a point of conversation for most of the week. Caroline Leavitt holding a press conference just a day ago talking about the Epstein files that led to a big story that we saw last night coming out from the Trump administration.
There's a lot of discussion about the Epstein files and the president's comments yesterday calling it a hoax. Can you clarify which part of the Epstein hoax is the hoax part?
The president is referring to the fact that Democrats have now seized on this as if they ever wanted transparency when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein, which is an asinine suggestion for any Democrat to make. The Democrats had control of this building, the White House, for 4 years, and they didn't do a dang thing when it came to transparency in regards to Jeffrey Epstein and his heinous crimes. It was this president who directed the Department of Justice and the Attorney General to do an exhaustive review of all files related to Jeffrey Epstein, which they did. The Attorney General and the FBI, led by Pam Bondi, Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, and they spent many months going through all of the files related to Jeffrey Epstein, and they concluded what they found in that memo, which they drafted and they released. And so the president has been transparent. He has followed through on his promises to the American people, but he doesn't like to see Democrats and the mainstream media covering this like it's the biggest story that the American people care about.
Boom. Okay, so there we are. And we talked about it the last couple of days as well, the big wins that we've seen from the Trump administration. This has been the one, I guess, hiccup, the one trip up, the one falter, the one PR gaffe, whatever you want to call it. This has been the one issue. In 6 months of a Trump administration, this is the one time where we're just like, ugh. Because he is kind of taken the role of the Epstein files, the Epstein scenario is a hoax made up by the Democrats, just like they did with the Russiagate and so on and so forth. Obviously, he was doing horribly bad things, and Donald Trump just hasn't quite gotten the memo that this is important to his base to try and stop this. That being said, that press conference led to the big story that we saw late last night.
What's trending today?
With an official announcement from Donald Trump on his Truth Social, based on the ridiculous amount of publicity given to Jeffrey Epstein, I have asked Attorney General Pam Bondi to produce any and all pertinent grand jury testimony subject to court approval. This scam perpetuated by the Democrats should end right now. This is big. This is big league. What he's essentially saying is what we heard the statement from Mike Johnson just a few days ago as well, in a statement that said, really, hey, we want to move past this. And we have so many big wins. We have a lot of big victories going on, too many that we can really report and cover on a regular basis, that it's all being stifled because the media has really honed in on this. And the Democrats and the media have found an opportunity to try and divide and conquer the MAGA movement and the Republican movement. And Donald Trump doesn't want that. And he's seeing what it's doing. And he's got nothing to hide. He's not on the Epstein files. It's really stupid. And, of course, the new accusations from the Wall Street Journal that we'll touch on in just a minute are absolutely insane. It's stupid that we're even talking about this. But he said, fine, you know what? Anything that's pertinent, anything that's important that doesn't compromise victims, send it to the grand jury. Let's release this and be done with it. And that's what we're doing, which is really exciting. Now, because of that, and this is why, again, it explains everything, why Donald Trump's not trying to cover anything up, but he just wants to be done with all of these scandals and move on to policy, is because hours after his statement of release everything, and Democrats for the last couple of days, release it, Donald Trump won't release it, after they had 4 years of doing it themselves and they never released anything, that now... And they called for Donald Trump to release it, thinking that he wouldn't do it. He finally said, fine. Now they have to change the narrative. They got to change the story on Donald Trump. And the latest story that Wall Street Journal says that they have is the fact that Donald Trump drew a birthday card. Get this. Yeah, he drew a card for Jeffrey Epstein on his birthday and drew a picture of a naked lady with the details within the naked lady. That's the claim.
Say what?
I know. Now, here's the weird story, and this is where it just takes... Okay, regardless, let's just say it's true, which it's not, but let's just say just for a moment it's true. Who cares? I mean, is that really the story here? We're trying to fight human trafficking and child trafficking, and now the Democrats have changed the narrative. The media has changed the narrative from, hey, let's fight human trafficking and child trafficking and inappropriate behavior with minors, to Donald Trump was friends with Jeffrey Epstein by drawing him a silly picture in a Sharpie of a naked woman. Look at how much crime that is. There's an investigation going on with Donald Trump. And the story that ran it doesn't even have any information about the actual drawing itself or a picture of that drawing itself. All they did was criticize Donald Trump when he made a post that says that he doesn't make drawings. Another Truth Social post earlier this morning said the Wall Street Journal printed a fake letter, supposedly to Epstein, that are not my words, not the way I talk. Also, I don't draw pictures. I told Rupert Murdoch it was a scam, that he shouldn't print this fake story, but he did, and now I'm going to sue his you-know-what off, and that and his third-rate newspaper. Thank you for the attention to this matter, Donald J. Trump. Now, they don't have a picture of the actual drawing, or else it would be all over the place. I mean, that's the way the media rolls, right? They want to destroy Donald Trump. That's their entire goal. They don't have any information here. But what they did was, according to Mediaite, they ran a story when he said that I don't draw pictures. They then posted a picture of him that drew like the skyline of New York City that went to some charity for an auction back in the late 1990s, early 2000s, and then said, hey, look at this. It went for like $16,000 or $17,000 of a really silly drawing of him just like a Sharpie, and said Donald Trump does draw, even though he said he never draws. They don't have the actual picture. They changed the narrative. They twisted the story. They took away the important aspect of human trafficking, and then they don't even have the picture they say they have, but they're now posting pictures of him saying, look, he actually does draw because he drew a silly little picture for a charity like 25 years ago. This is the sickness of the media in the Democrat Party, and this is what Donald Trump wanted to avoid. Because it's stupid. We have so many better things to focus our attention on, and yet now we're here using drama, distracting ourselves again for what Donald Trump may or may not have been involved in while he was before president, and things that he was associated with Jeffrey Epstein, when he wants to focus on policy and the massive amounts of wins. But now they're scared, because after claiming that they wanted the information out there, claiming that Donald Trump was not going to do it, and calling for him to do it because it's a lack of transparency and so on and so forth. Now that he's actually doing it, they had to change the narrative because they are panicked at what potentially could come out. This is the biggest first step. The biggest first step in massive transparency at the federal level. We have a long way to go on a lot of different issues, but this is the first one, and it's really exciting to see this happen. Lots more coming up. One more segment left. Stay here.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier. America's safe space for common sense. This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Yeah, it is. Welcome back into it. Last segment here as we wrap things up for a Friday. Always great to have you. If you want more information, by the way, you can go to our website, HoosierReason.com. We have some really cool announcements coming up soon. I cannot wait to talk to you more about some things that are going on behind the scenes with the radio show, brand new affiliates coming on board, some new partnerships we have. It's really exciting. We have a lot of things working in the wings right now, so stay tuned. By the way, of course, got to tell you about our friends over at Americans for Prosperity. Wonderful partners with us here on this show. As you know, they did it, my friends. They're the ones, I give them so much credit for the passage of that one big, beautiful bill. They are amazing.
We did it! We did it! We did it! Yay!
Yeah, they spent more than $20 million on that campaign trying to let you know what was going on with the One Big Beautiful Bill, the codifying of the Trump tax cuts 1.0, the passage of the Trump tax cuts 2.0, which is all really exciting, and they were the ones that spent massive amounts of money door knocking, letting people know what's going on, holding rallies, and putting pressure on elected officials. So we appreciate them. I'm so excited to continue to work with them here on the radio show. If you want more information, you can go to their website, americansforprosperity.org. Find a chapter near you. Get connected with their statewide chapters. There are chapters in all 50 states. They are the largest grassroots movement in the entire nation. It is Americans for Prosperity, and they're great partners with us right here on The Voice of Reason. All right, real quick as we wrap up the Epstein conversation, the whole distraction now taking away from the purpose of fighting against, human and child trafficking to now focus on Donald Trump drew a picture for Jeffrey Epstein, which is really stupid. Even some Democrats are just like, maybe we shouldn't go down this road. Even one, which I got to admit, really surprised why he's now trying to sound more rational. Chris Cuomo, formerly from CNN, on his podcast, and I think on News Nation, said this.
I get that he's pissed off, okay? And he's not wrong. This Wall Street Journal piece is a hack job, okay? And he says he's suing Rupert Murdoch, who he, was his buddy. They have, Fox kind of made Trump, and he's suing the Journal. He's suing everybody. He says he didn't write the birthday letter that they're ascribing to him, to Epstein for his 50th birthday. I mean, it's so stupid, okay? The Epstein story is about abusing kids who didn't have the power or agency to do anything about it, that rich and powerful people may have known it was going on and they got away with it. That's the story, okay? It's not that Trump liked a scumbag, okay? Now, I get that in the media this is great because it's bad for Trump and he's going crazy and he's going to pump and move the story for the Wall Street Journal right now by saying it's fake and it's wrong, but it doesn't move the needle in the country.
Yeah, it's a great point, and he's spot on with that. It's weird. It seems like after they actually get out of their networks and they kind of do their own thing, he's still a lefty, he's still kind of a nut job, but a little bit more rational. a little bit more rational, just like a few other hosts. Once they kind of go off and do their own thing, they realize that, hey, the money and the popularity and the big hits and the big downloads come from a little bit more sane conversations, a little bit more rational people in the consumer that wants to hear a particular message or at least have an opinion that's not as stupid as what we hear in some of the mainstream. And he's kind of starting to recognize that and realize that. That being said, it's going to be a story that flops, and they are going to look really, really foolish in the end. Kind of like when you go woke, you go broke, and you really make dumb decisions and you become really unpopular. We have now destroyed an entire iconic movement in this nation culturally, and that was an announcement from Stephen Colbert from The Late Show just yesterday.
Before we start the show, I want to let you know something that I found out just last night. Next year will be our last season. The network will be ending The Late Show in May. And
yeah, well, hey, can't be so anti-Trump.
yeah, I share your feelings. It's not just the end of our show, but it's the end of The Late Show on CBS. I'm not being replaced. This is all just going away.
That's insane. Can you imagine a major network with one of the biggest shows out there? I mean, it was David Letterman. I mean, Johnny Carson started this thing back in the day, this late night talk show format, and a major network going away with the entire show. Imagine, and put this into perspective for you for just a moment here, that Stephen Colbert, who took over for David Letterman when he retired, which he wasn't supposed to do so anyways, Craig Ferguson, the Late Show host at that time, was supposed to fill in that slot based on his contract. CBS hated him so much, they paid out his contract and just let him go because they did not like Craig Ferguson. They brought on Stephen Colbert, the radical leftist nut, and he not only just lost their ratings, he killed an entire legacy of late-night talk shows. That's how bad that show was. And now they're bankrupt, or it's financial. Adam Schiff made a post on Twitter saying that he recorded an interview with Stephen Colbert and said that if it's a political move, then it needs to be investigated. Well, guess what? If it is a political move, it's because you've been too radical and they don't like your agenda. Shocker, right? Back at it again on Monday. Everybody have a great weekend. We'll see you back on the radio here real soon. Bye.